Hi guys, welcome to a math tutorial video. Today we're going to talk about quadratic functions. So let me write this out. Introduction to quadratic functions. To quadratic functions. So what I'm going to talk to you guys about today is I'm going to talk to you about y is equal to x squared. Or in other words, let's denote this as f of x. So it's a function of x. And so first of all, how does this graph look like? Well, the graph of this function looks something along these lines. So let's label this as function f of x is equal to x squared. You're going to see this notation a lot, so let's box this. So from now on, I'm going to refer to this quadratic graph as f of x, or function of x, or the quadratic function. But anyway, so this is how the quadratic function looks like. It opens up upwards, and you can see it looks almost like a smiley face. That's how I remember the quadratic function. So f of x equal to x squared opens up upwards, and then another function, negative x squared, is going to be negative f of x, and it's going to be something that is reflected about the x-axis. So here's your x, and here's your y. And it's something that looks like this. And it looks like a depressant face. It looks like a sad face. And this function, here, let's denote this, is going to be negative f of x is equal to x squared. Here, let me give myself some more room here. X squared. And so this function opens up downwards, while this function opens up upwards. So let's take a look at the difference between the domain of the two functions. I mean, there's not really a difference in the domain. So the domain of both is just going to be the whole real line. So this is going to be the domain of f of x is equal to x squared, and negative f of x is equal to negative x squared. What about the range? Well, the range is pretty interesting, so let's look at the range. So the range of this function, so let's do the range of f of x first. And again, it's this upward parabola. So the range of f of x is going to be, you could see how everything is above the x-axis, or in other words, above y is equal to 0. And so the range of f of x is going to be greater than or equal to 0, such that y is a real number. What about for the other one, the negative f of x? So the negative f of x is going to be less than equal to 0, such that y is a real number. And that's because there's no positive values that this quadratic function can take on, this negative f of x. And so everything is going, and the maximum value that it could take on is going to be equal to y is equal to 0. And the maximum value that f of x, or the minimum value that f of x can take on, is going to be y is equal to 0. So you can see the correlation between the two when you take this quadratic function, you take this original function, and you reflect it about the x-axis. What about the x and y intercept? So to get the x and y intercept, well, first of all, let's look at the x-intercept. So the x-intercept, so to get the x-intercept, we just set y equal to 0. So set y equal to 0. And what we have here is we have 0 is equal to negative, here let me go, plus or minus x squared. And I mean, it doesn't matter in this case because now our x-intercept for this case is going to be x is equal to 0. This is our x-intercept. What about our y-intercept? So here, let me just make some room here. Here, let me just put a little box around it. So the y-intercept, to get the y-intercept, is the same thing. To get the y-intercept of this function, we set x equal to 0. And so when we set x equal to 0, what we get again is going to be plus or minus 0 squared. And what we get here is we just get y is equal to 0. But if we look at these points right here, if we look at our x-intercept and the y-intercept, they perfectly match this point right here, which is the middle point of the parabola. So this middle point right here is called the vertex. So this is called the vertex. And the vertex is that middle point right here. The vertex of f of x is the lowest value that f of x can take on. And this point right here is 0, 0. And vice versa, for negative f of x, it is the maximum value that negative f of x can take on. And the vertex is very special. And we're going to talk about the vertex in the next video. But to end this video, all I wanted to talk about was the domain of this quadratic function, the range of the quadratic function, and the x and the y intercept of the quadratic function. In the next video, we're going to talk about how to complete the square, and we're going to talk about the quadratic formula. See you guys then.